Good morning, dear students. How are you all? So in the last video we started to understand the main pressure belts of the world. The first one we understood, that is equatorial low pressure belt. Now today let us understand about subtropical high pressure belts. So what are subtropical high pressure belts? These belts are found on both sides of the equator. One near the Tropic of Cancer in the northern hemisphere and the other near the Tropic of Capricorn in the southern hemisphere. Moreover, these belts exist between the 30° and the 35° parallels of latitudes, both north and south of the equator. So what happens actually is that the air arising from equatorial regions, we read last time that in the equatorial regions there is the area of low pressure. So because of low pressure and extreme heat, the air moves upward. So the air arising from equatorial regions, it spreads towards the poles, it goes towards the poles. So when it reaches up to around 30° north and 30° south latitude only, it starts losing its heat. It loses its heat. And then what happens after losing its heat? It causes a high pressure due to the accumulation of air on the ground in these regions. Because the air becomes heavy, so it descends, it goes down, and because of that a high pressure area is created, because on the ground the air gets accumulated. There is the absence of surface winds. So in the olden days, what used to be there, like ships had to unload the cargo. Why? To make them lighter. At times the cargo used to be the horses themselves. Thus this belt of calms came to be known as horse latitude. So here this question is very important, that why subtropical high pressure belts are also called the horse latitudes. The next is subpolar low pressure belts. These are located between 60° and 65° north and south latitudes. These are also found in both the hemispheres, and it is obvious that the low pressure is not caused by the temperature, as there is low temperature throughout the air. The temperature is not high. If the temperature would be high, then only we could say that okay, because of temperature this belt has low pressure. But there is low temperature throughout the year, so this means that this belt should have caused high pressure. This belt should have high pressure, but it's not the fact. So it means that the low pressure belt is dynamically produced. It is not statically produced. So how dynamically? Let us understand that. We all know that Earth rotates on its axis. So due to the effect of axial rotation, the wind spreads outward from the polar region to subpolar area. The wind converges means meets with the air coming from the subtropical area. The air rises up to create a low pressure zone, because here the wind, it meets with the air which comes from the subtropical area. So then it starts rising up, and in that way low pressure zone is created. As you can see in your books too, that subpolar low pressure belts, here in this belt the atmosphere is thin, and because of the rotation of the earth, air swings towards the equator, and that causes low density in this region. So a partial vacuum is created. So that causes a low pressure belt here, and the air is so thin here that it can hardly exert any pressure. And now let us see the last one, that is polar high pressure belts. So these belts extend around the poles up to about 80 degrees of latitude in both hemispheres. You all know that in the polar region temperature is very low all the year round. Not only this, the rotation of the earth causes a strong centripetal tendency in these regions, and that results in sinking of cold air in the polar areas. So all these factors lead to a high pressure in the polar areas. So you see, around the North Pole and the South Pole, the air is so cold and heavy that it is unable to rise high above the surface. Because of the heaviness and the coldness, the air is not capable of rising high, too much high above the surface. So that weight of the cold air that creates a high pressure belt over the poles, and thus these high pressure belts are called polar high pressure belts. Now, what is the meaning of shifting of the pressure belts? The pressure belts which we have studied till now, they are not permanent in character. We cannot say that they are permanent. Why? They keep shifting with the movement of the sun. See, in the absence of the revolution of the earth around the sun, the global pressure belts would have been permanent and stationary at their places. But the relative position of the earth with the sun changes within the year due to earth's revolution, and thus the position of all the pressure belts except the polar high pressure belts changes with the northward and southward migration of the sun. Air pressure depends on temperature, and therefore as the sun moves from one tropic to another, the pressure belts also do the same. And this process is called the shifting of the pressure belts. So students, I hope you all have understood the various pressure belts of the world and also the shifting of the pressure belts. So study well, and any doubts then that can be cleared in the Zoom class. Thank you so much. Bye bye.